Well, hello everyone again. Thank you so much, Susan. So I'm contemplating whether or not I can get away with showing you guys a trailer of the Sentinel Landscape documentary that we did as kind of a start point. It's just a really great introduction. And so I'm gonna attempt to share my screen and play this trailer. It's only 2 minutes. I'm my fear in doing it is sometimes, depending on bandwidth, it can be a little broken up. So please, someone jump in and yell and tell me we're not seeing it, it's not coming through, and I'll stop and just make sure you all have the link. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here and play this if I can.
Sentinel is the soldier at the ready to protect and defend. The landscape is the environmental qualities. So I think the Sentinel landscape represents a goal to achieve both. The promise of the Sentinel landscape is a military mission, vibrant working lands, and that conservation value, that natural landscape. We have an opportunity to protect those working lands and protect those natural areas.
The size of the Sentinel landscape works at a scale that nature works at. It works at a scale where nature actually functions.
We're not just warfighters, we're land stewards. That stewardship goes beyond our boundary.
Farmers and ranchers are the world's first conservationists. They're the ones that are taking care of the land every day.
This is where the water is the healthiest on the whole Mississippi River. Well, that's cool. Trumpeters cruising right over. And the lifeblood of the country, so to speak, running right through our backyard. For the Sentinel landscape to really look to the future and bring the partners together to talk about their common goals, it's a model we need to really expand across the country.
The Sentinel landscape is an idea that has the possibility of uniting people. We can come together on this idea of a secure future.
All right, so I hope everyone was able to see that okay. Wonderful. There is actually about a 12-minute documentary, short documentary that is available on the Sentinel Landscapes website. So if you're interested in seeing the entire thing, I would encourage you to go there and check it out. This is a documentary that we, through the Sentinel Landscape Partnership, put together to help tell the story of the Sentinel landscape. And so part of the reason I wanted to share that today was it really does a great job of introducing what Susan had asked me to talk about and kind of what inspired the effort for the Sentinel Landscape Partnership, as well as the agencies and organizations that are involved. And so to tell you the very short story of what inspired this effort, it really started at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State, and it was an opportunity that came together between DoD and Natural Resources Conservation Service back in about 2012, early 2013. And to be perfectly honest, we, to some extent, accidentally identified that we were both working with the same landowners to achieve the same outcome without knowing that the other was doing it. And my former program director, who's no longer with us, used to say, well, we're really great at random acts of conservation. Wouldn't it be amazing if we actually tried to do this on purpose? And that ultimately led to what has become the Sentinel Landscapes Partnership, which was a recognition by DoD that the tools and resources that we had, primarily the REPI program, to work off of our installations, to look at land conservation, compatible land use to include forests, farms, ranches, natural resource areas, open space. Our tools were really limited, but our federal partners had a multitude of tools and resources that were working to achieve these same outcomes. And if we could work on those together, and if we could start to identify key landscapes where we wanted to share in those conservation objectives, those compatible land use objectives, promoting agriculture, promoting forestry objectives, that we could all achieve our outcomes more efficiently and more effectively. And so at this point, the three primary federal agencies involved in Sentinel Landscapes are the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Department of the Interior. Within those agencies, more specifically, the core group that's really worked on this is Natural Resources Conservation Service, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Bureau of Land Management. But at the local level, within the landscapes that have been designated, there are countless state agencies, local government entities, NGOs, academic institutions, hundreds of different partner organizations. I would say each of the Sentinel Landscapes themselves have anywhere between 25 to 40 different partner entities that are working with them. And there's more detail on all of these partner entities, as well as specifics of what is going on in each of the landscapes on the Sentinel Landscapes website. There are two other topics that Susan had asked us to think about and share some thoughts with you guys. And so I'm going to flip-flop Susan's questions a little bit and first talk about what I've learned about interagency coordination across landscapes working through this process first, and then I'll talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities, because there's some really exciting opportunities, and I wanted to close with a discussion of some of those opportunities. And so what have I learned? It's hard. Communicate, 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 and be patient. It takes dedicated investment and persistence, and nothing, excuse me, is going to go as smoothly or as quickly as anyone wants, but you got to stick with it. When you're talking about federal agencies in particular, we are huge bureaucracies in and of ourselves. And then you try to put multiple federal agencies together. It doesn't go fast. And the challenge for that is that the people who are working on these initiatives are people who are leaning forward, who are passionate, who are committed, and who want to see this happen. And quite often, it's not happening as fast as you want to see it happen. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that you have to really stick with it, and you have to be persistent. I think it's incredibly important that all agencies involved must see themselves and their mission represented in these landscapes. What that means sometimes is someone has to get on the dance floor first, meaning you can't be afraid to step forward with your goals, because that helps others open up. We probably spent a solid 2 years with a whole bunch of really smart, really nice people sitting around a table, no one wanting to step on anyone else's toes by saying what was most important to them first. When we finally said, all right, enough is enough, I'm just going to say what I want, that led to everyone else saying, oh, we want that too, and we want this. And it finally got the conversation going. So you can't be afraid to kind of step forward first and be a little selfish. I tell people that all the time in our meetings. Be selfish. What do you need to be involved in this? If you're not getting what you need out of it, you're not going to take the time to be committed to it. There's no single model that can be applied to interagency landscape partnerships. You need to allow local priorities to shape the partnership, and then remain flexible in supporting all of the models that emerge. That was a very important conversation we had early on in Sentinel Landscapes, was do we want to identify key locations around the country that we at the federal level think are the most important, or do we want to see what emerges from the local level up? And we chose to let the local partnership structures drive this because that's where the passion, commitment, and work is happening. And then we had to adjust our approach and our model at the federal level to support what was happening locally. And then the last thing that I'd say I've learned, it's so critically important to share lessons learned across all these different landscapes. And so creating mechanisms for the landscapes to communicate with each other regularly is incredibly valuable. They are all different and therefore they all learn from one another. And so I have a list that's probably too long here, but I'm gonna go down this challenges and opportunities list pretty quickly and just share kind of some quick thoughts that I put together on this. I'll kind of start with challenges and close out with the opportunities. So the first bullet's gonna sound a lot like what I said about what I've learned about interagency coordination on landscapes. Large landscape partnering is really hard. And capacity is the long pole in the tent. We all have programs that are focused on implementing actions, acquiring land, protecting land, implementing practices. We also need people to organize that work, and paying for and building that capacity to organize work across a partnership is really hard. Communication has to be flexible. What is needed at the federal level to communicate about what you're doing is not what's needed at the local level all the time. And so we have to understand the different types of stories that we need to tell to support our efforts at the federal level and to help our local partners support their efforts locally. Our leadership might care about numbers and leverage and all those things Kevin was talking about, that you have to sit in these meetings and justify how you're spending money and what that's achieving. The examples of how you impact a single landowner are what matter and resonate on the local level. And so there has to be balance in how you communicate. Private landowners are hungry for well-organized, easily accessible information about all of our programs. They want to get involved, but we don't make it easy for them in many instances. To address this, one of the things that we've worked on developing is a landowner resources tool that is available on the Sentinel Landscape website. And that's been really helpful in getting landowners engaged and helping to take a little bit of the mystery out of who they should talk to and how to get involved in a program. Local innovation and commitment are the power source, and that's what we have to tap into. We need to empower it and we need to celebrate it. It is the local landowners and the local partners who are doing this work. A couple successes and opportunities. We had a successful Joint Chiefs Initiative project awarded at Fort Huachuca this year that focused on wildfire risk mitigation, and that led to a conversation about the potential for a nationwide wildfire risk mitigation partnership between DoD and the U.S. Forest Service. We're funding that work at Fort Huachuca right now and looking at opportunities. So I think that's identified a project that could lead to more work in that area. We are focused on designating new Sentinel landscapes in 2021, and we're particularly focused on building implementation plans as an element of those designations. And that creates an opportunity to better implement and integrate with state forest and wildlife action plans. Some of the Sentinel landscapes are doing that now. That's something we really want to push as we move forward, is better integration of those state level plans into Sentinel landscape implementation plans. There are also countless new opportunities focused on resilience to changing climate conditions. The Department of Defense has added a number of new authorities. We have seen most of those in the draft of the National Defense Authorization Act for FY21. Expect all of those to be finalized. There are some really great cost sharing opportunities and funds as match expansion opportunities. So we'll continue to share information about that. There are some great pilot projects focused on prescribed fire within North Carolina, Georgia, and Minnesota. And so as those projects move forward, I think we're going to identify additional best practices and opportunities. And then the last thing that I'll mention, the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, which is led by Tim Mayle, released a report called Conservation of Defense. And one of the focus areas in that report was Sentinel Landscapes. And that report provided a series of recommendations to the Department of Defense, to other federal agencies, and to NGO partners, and really presents a great opportunity for some follow-up to see how we can work better to address this. And I'd be happy to share a copy of that report. You can also Google that and find it. It is available online, but I would encourage folks to take a look at that. It's a really great assessment of opportunities to work with the Department of Defense, and Sentinel Landscapes is highlighted there. And we'll be rolling out an application for new Sentinel Landscape designations in mid-January. So we're really hoping to add to the Sentinel Landscape family over the next year. And so I think that's probably the most significant opportunity that we have. And I will stop there. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Really interesting to hear what's going on and your observations about what the challenges are and lessons learned. I'm sure that resonated with a lot of folks here.